Now desperate, the U.S. is accepting face masks, gowns and gloves airlifted from China. The U.S. State Department shipped 17.8 tons of donated coronavirus medical supplies to China 7 weeks ago, when health experts and some American lawmakers were already seeking federal action to prepare the country for the disease. The massive shipment to China included medical masks, gowns and respirators, now in desperately short supply across America. The supplies were contributed by American companies and nonprofits, according to a U.S. Agency for International Development official. The State Department touted its aid to China in a press release February 7, 3 weeks after the first COVID-19 case emerged in Washington state. The statement said the agency was prepared to spend $100 million on the fight against the disease in China and other foreign countries. That was the same day the World Health Organization sounded an alert that such supplies were in critically short supply around the globe. President Donald Trump predicted that day in a tweet that China would be successful in vanquishing the illness, especially as the weather starts to warm and the virus hopefully becomes weaker and then gone. Later that month, Trump compared COVID-19 to his impeachment and claimed it was Democrats' new hoax to make him look bad. The previous month he boasted at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland that it was totally under control in the U.S. A desperate U.S. airlifted 80 tons of medical supplies from China to America on Sunday. Another 21 flights are planned, the New York Times reported. The plane delivered 130,095 masks, 1.8 million face masks and gowns, 10 million gloves, and thousands of thermometers for New York, New Jersey and Connecticut, said a spokesperson for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The gear is a small contribution to what's needed. State Department officials, responding to a question at a news briefing last week asking whether the U.S. now regrets sending the supplies to China, pointed out that the shipment came from private donors, not the government. Even before the supplies were sent to China, U.S. lawmakers were calling on the Trump administration to make preparations to deal with the spreading disease in America, noted Mother Jones, which was the first to report the aid to China. Representative Chris Murphy, D-Con, and other lawmakers offered to allocate emergency funding for early health measures and research to address coronavirus in the U.S., but the offer was rejected by the White House. Murphy's observation that such measures were needed immediately turned out to be prophetic. 10 days ago, Trump snapped at governors pleading for supplies. The federal government is not supposed to be out there buying vast amounts of items and then shipping, he said. We're not a shipping clerk. The Trump administration has since begun pleading with the international community for supply donations, including N95 masks, gloves, respirators and hand sanitizer. More checks from the government, free coronavirus treatment and infrastructure spending are just some priorities for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. House Democrats largely took a backseat during negotiations with the Trump administration over the massive $2 trillion bill aimed at reducing the economic damage from the coronavirus pandemic. The next round of talks will likely look a lot different. On Monday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, D-Calif, laid out Democrats' priorities in the Phase 4 legislation Congress is expected to take up once it returns from recess by April 20. During a conference call with reporters, the Speaker said her party would be fighting for added assistance to hospitals and nursing homes, more direct payments to individuals suffering amid the crisis, requirements that hospitals cover the cost of treatment in addition to testing of those diagnosed with COVID-19, bigger paid family and medical leave benefits, and help for state pension funds at risk because of the economic crisis. Our first bills were about addressing the emergency, Pelosi said on the call, referring to smaller bills Congress passed earlier this month. Our third was about mitigation to the economy. This fourth bill will be about recovery. Pelosi said the bill ought to specifically address the country's aging infrastructure because making the internet more widely available would help Americans teleworking from home, those who are remote learning and those who are using telemedicine to communicate with a doctor. She said more funding was also needed to overhaul the nation's water systems to ensure access to clean sources of drinking water. As the president said in the campaign, and since infrastructure was a priority for him, that's why in terms of recovery that's probably the most bipartisan path we can take, Pelosi added on the call. Democrats want the next coronavirus emergency bill to set new federal workplace protections for frontline healthcare workers, who have been dealing with shortages of critical supplies at crowded hospitals and care centers. There is no legal requirement for healthcare facilities, not just hospitals, but nursing homes, mental health institutions, ambulatory care facilities, and others, to take necessary steps to protect frontline healthcare workers, Representative Bobby Scott, D.Va, said on the Monday call. Pelosi said she also wants to provide more money to states and localities who are struggling to respond to the pandemic, including specifically the District of Columbia, which has a bigger population than some states and contributes more to federal tax coffers than many more. D.C. is due to receive significantly less money, however, than any state in the relief bill moving through Congress last week. Republicans seem more resistant to the idea of another massive spending bill right now, especially one authored by Pelosi. Given how hard it was to get last week's bill to the president's desk, the next measure will prove even more difficult. I would hope anybody that's talking about a Phase 4 would pause right now, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, our caliph, said Friday on Fox News. Let's make sure this is actually working in the process and be smart, get the data back of where, if, we do need more help. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin did not rule out the possibility of needing another financial aid package in an interview with CBS Face the Nation on Sunday, saying, "If this takes longer, we will go back to Congress and get more support for the American economy, but I hope that's not needed."